PBS Hawaiʻi, supported by viewers like you. It's not just TV, it's awareness. PBS Hawaiʻi, home is here.
Local broadcasts of Insights on PBS Hawaiʻi are made possible by the support of viewers like you. Mahalo, and by Carl Smith Ball, providing legal services throughout Hawaii and the Pacific since 1857, making a positive difference in the communities where we live and work. The Waimānalo Gulch Landfill in West Oʻahu has been operating for 35 years and is slated to close in 2028. After an exhaustive search, the city announced a new landfill site just outside of Wahiawā. The Board of Water Supply is against the location because the agricultural land sits above an aquifer, but the city says safeguards to prevent water contamination will be in place. So what happens next? Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of Insights on PBS Hawaiʻi start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaiʻi. I'm Lauren Day. Oahu's garbage has to go somewhere, and in just a few years, it won't be going to the Waimānalo Gulch landfill. The city has until 2028 to have a new facility up and running to replace the current Kapolei location. After years of struggling to find a new site, the city announced this past December its proposed location in an area northwest of Wahiawā. The agricultural land is owned by the Dole Food Company. According to the Board of Water Supply, the land is situated some 800 feet above an aquifer, sparking concerns about possible contamination to our drinking water. Two bills introduced this session at the legislature call for a ban on landfills to be built over freshwater aquifers. So where does that leave the city in this difficult decision? We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email or call in your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaiʻi.org and on the PBS Hawaiʻi YouTube page. Now to our guests in studio. Roger Babcock is the director of the Department of Environmental Services for the City and County of Honolulu. He previously directed the city's Department of Facility Maintenance and has also taught civil and environmental engineering at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Representative Amy Perusso serves District 46, which covers a portion of Waipio Acres to Mokulēʻia. She's the vice chair of the Energy and Environmental Protection Committee. Prior to her time as a lawmaker, she was a social studies teacher for nearly 20 years. Wayne Tanaka is the chapter director for the Sierra Club of Hawaii. He came to the Sierra Club after serving a decade in the public policy program at the Office of Hawaiian Affairs and is also a licensed attorney and engineer. And we have Dr. Amarjit Singh, has been a professor of civil, environmental, and construction engineering at the University of Hawaii at Manoa for more than 3 decades. He's a professional engineer and a fellow of the American Society of Civil Engineers. Roger, I'm going to start with you. The proposed Wahiawā location. Where do we stand now? Can you update our viewers what's happening with that potential proposed new landfill?
Yeah, so as you know, we proposed that site northwest of Wahiawā as a site that would meet the requirements that, for siting a landfill, and that we could safely do that using all the safeguards and rules and regulations associated with municipal solid waste landfills. Currently, the legislature there are 2 bills in the legislature that would make that site not usable legally. And so that's Senate Bill 438 and House Bill 969. And Rep. Perusso may talk more about those things. So if one of those, some final bill passes, then that site would not be possible for us to use. So
still in limbo. It's not out of the question just yet.
That's correct.
And then before I go to Representative Perusso to explain a little bit more on those bills, can you back up a little bit and explain why did that Wahiawā location meet the requirements?
Sure. So we had actually the city's been looking for a new landfill site for many years. Most recently we had we formed a landfill advisory committee in 2021. They worked through 2022 and made recommendations on and evaluated 6 sites. All of them are in central Oahu, somewhere between, say, Kunia and Haleiwa, and did rankings and scorings based on a bunch of criteria. And This was one of the 6 sites that we determined would be the most suitable for the next landfill.
Representative Perusso, can you tell us a little bit more about the 2 bills and where you stand on them?
Sure. So House Bill 969 was introduced by Representative Quinlan, and it would prohibit the siting of a landfill over an aquifer. And Senate Bill 438, which was introduced by Senator Donovan De La Cruz, that would also prohibit a siting of a landfill over an aquifer, but also prohibit that same siting on any agricultural land. And in the original language, it included both A and B class lands, and now it's limited to A lands. So those are the most important elements of those 2 bills.
Wayne, how does the Sierra Club of Hawaii feel about the Wahiawā location?
Very concerned. This really is not just about our water, but it's about our children's water and our grandchildren's water. And knowing that all landfills, even modern ones, are expected to fail at some point, we may be burdening, our future generations with another Red Hill situation where their drinking water supply may be compromised. And just to take a step back and to think about what's going on with our climate and with our planet, right? We're going to see significant reductions in rainfall. I think the best models indicate that at minimum we will have a 35% reduction of rainfall in the western coast of the islands. And so really our kids, our grandkids are going to need as much water as we can protect for them. And so this is really our generational kuleana to make sure that we're thinking long-term, generationally, and ensuring we're not, selling out the future water security of our.
We'll dive more into this as well, but Professor Singh, maybe you can weigh in on your perspective of the Wahiawā location, but I'm also curious if from an engineering perspective, is there a way to safely have a landfill above an aquifer?
Lauren, it totally astonishes me that anyone would ever even think of having a landfill above an aquifer. With all the skill and talent at the city, it's absolutely uncalled for to even propose having a landfill above an aquifer. All landfills leak except fairy tale landfills. And we do not, under any circumstances, want to play with the lives and health of the people of this community. I mean, somebody must have a plan to really hurt the community, maybe kill a few people. As it is, the rates of cancer are so very high. And this whole proposal is totally unconscionable, and it should be dead on arrival. So that's my opinion about the Wahiawā landfill. Of course, the Board of Water Supply is dead against it. So is the entire community. The public sentiment is against it. The city must listen to the public sentiment. Why not? That's why they were elected. So now there are alternatives. There are new technologies. And we actually don't need to be fixated on a landfill. And there are other technologies that can take us beyond that.
We'll definitely dive into that as well.
Okay.
Roger, we have somebody from the city here. Would love to have you weigh in on what Professor Singh just said.
Well, so the city does need to have a landfill, at least in the short term, medium term. Perhaps someday in the future, we could have zero waste, for example, or greatly reduce the volume of waste that's produced, have everything be recycled and reused, and also have conversion technologies which have very few residuals. We also know that things can be shipped out of the state. All hazardous waste that's generated in the state is shipped out. We are shipping out all of the metals that we recover and recycle, tens of thousands of tons per year. So, we know that everything is shipped into Hawaii and it can be, and things could be shipped out. So it has to do with cost and sustainability and resilience and things like that. Landfill is also necessary if we have a disaster, like a big fire perhaps in Lahaina, or a hurricane. Then we would have a lot of debris that we would need to dispose of somehow. And so in that situation, it's more difficult to think about perhaps shipping all of that material away somewhere. So we are evaluating, and we have lots of recycling programs. Happy to talk about that more as we go along, and we continue to have more on different types of recycling and recovery of reusable materials.
Can you also touch on why the city chose the location, even though it was above an aquifer? I remember doing some research and listening to another interview that you did on another local news outlet explaining the lining and how it would potentially be a safe, viable option.
Right. So landfills are a highly regulated facility by federal law and state law. There's all different kinds of laws about where you can site a landfill and where you can't, as well as how you mitigate any potential risks associated with it not functioning the way it's supposed to prevent failure and protect the environment and public health. So those do include, as you mentioned, a liner system, a leachate collection system, monitoring wells, gas collection wells. There are closure activities and post-closure activities that are all required by law. And those are specifically, of course, designed to protect the environment and public health. And they've been in place for a long time in federal law since 1976. And those laws have been updated periodically. So those are designed to protect all Americans from risks associated with landfills. And so there are thousands, of course, of landfills in the United States, and so there need to be rules and laws to protect us from them. And there have been a lot of landfills on Oahu in the past, and I'd be happy to talk more about that if folks want. Yeah.
It's a hard topic because nobody wants a landfill in their backyard. It's wherever the city does decide to put it is going to be controversial. Representative Perusso, what have you been hearing from your constituents about this Wahiawā location?
Since it was announced, I think that my community has really reacted very strongly, vehemently, in opposition. We've had multiple town halls, packed town halls, where we invited both Ernie Lau and Mr. Babcock to come speak and address and explain the situation to the community and the various perspectives so that the community had a full picture of the conflict and the issue at hand. And, honestly, our community is not only opposed to citing the landfill over the aquifer in Wahiawā, they're also opposed to the extension of the landfill at Waimānalo Gulch because there's a strong sense of solidarity and there's a really clear understanding of the environmental racism that the folks on the west side have been subjected to over the years. And I think that has been communicated clearly to me in multiple ways.
We're getting quite a few viewer questions and comments, so let's start there, and then anyone can weigh in. All of you can weigh in on one, or if there's some of these questions might be directed to one person. First, we'll start with Mike from Makiki, one of our viewers. He's asking, where do you prefer the site to be if not at the proposed location? So not at the Wahiawā one. Is there any consensus, and how do we come to a consensus?
I'd like to start.
Sure.
Because we've been having a lot of conversations about that in our community. And as you and the viewers may know, Wahiawā is a community that is heavily impacted by the presence of the military. So we are surrounded on multiple sides, 3 sides, by military presence. And it is, I would say, a consensus that the military should be providing some of those lands. And those lands are not really accurately described as federal lands. They're ceded lands. So those are, crown lands that should never have been taken by the federal government in the first place. And it's really the strong feeling of most folks that I talk to in my community that have watched the Red Hill debacle unfold and are really clear about the military's responsibility for that, and also the military's inability to be truthful about that. So there's a lot of resentment about that, and there's just strong sentiment that the military should step up and be part of this problem-solving process.
Wayne, I saw you nodding your head as she was talking.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very important to keep in mind is, right, I mean, the Navy's put us already in a water crisis. We've already compromised our Mokulēʻia Aquifer for decades, or potentially indefinitely. So to the extent they do want to commit to doing the right thing, or doing right after contaminating our groundwater supply, they really should be thinking hard about how they can help us avoid potentially risking another water source.
And Professor Singh, you're nodding your head as well.
Lauren, well, I must say, the military has no obligation to make land available for a landfill. This is not their problem. It's the city's problem. They have to be more responsible and come up with a solution on their own. They cannot just start imposing upon the military. And there's no need to do that when alternate solutions are available. Again, every question asks for, where can we place a landfill? Okay, what should be the life of a landfill? Again and again, you're fixated on a landfill. What we have to be fixated on is waste management. And there are different ways to get to managing waste. You don't have to be fixated on a landfill.
We actually have someone who asked about that. I'll probably find the question. I've got so many, I think I got lost. But since we're on the topic, Professor, can you give us what are your ideas of alternates to a landfill?
Well, the most promising and best alternate right now, an emerging technology, but actually it's emerging only in the area of MSW, but it's been around on Earth for about 100 years, is plasma arc gasification. Plasma arc gasification not that burns, it gasifies all particles at 15,000 degrees centigrade into its ions and elements. It has lesser environmental impact than even the landfill or incineration. It uses about 1/50th the land that a landfill will use. It has no leachate problems, okay, and it's more cost effective than a landfill, and you can produce electricity from it. And in the end, you can make money from a plasma arc gasification plant by burning waste. In fact, you can mine the refuse inside Waimānalo Gulch for electricity. Right now, you should ask the city how much do they spend each year on managing the landfill. How many tens of millions of dollars is that? But through plasma arc gasification, which has been used in many places around the world, and there are companies that sell the technology and sell the plants, the city can make money. I mean, is the city in business to make money or lose money? We must ask everybody that question.
Roger, can you weigh in on that? Or is the city considering plasma arc gasification?
Yeah. So actually, there was a plasma arc gasification facility on Oʻahu in the past. It was a small pilot facility in Campbell Industrial Park, and it specialized in medical waste. So it took only medical waste, and the size limitation was a 5-gallon drum. So that was how it was fed, and that was I'm not really sure if it was a research project or it was demonstration, but eventually it closed down. I think it wasn't economical or something. The city has previously looked at doing a full-scale plant like that, but as Dr. Singh mentioned, there isn't a full-scale facility to view or to be able to use as a model for something of the scale that we would need. And so it's difficult to be the first at something, especially if it's very expensive and new technology and you know, not proven at the scale that we would need. We know that we get 2,000 tons a day of waste that we need to deal with, and so we have to have something that's technology that's reliable. When you put out your trash every day, or your green cart or your blue cart, we pick it up, and you don't have to worry about it. So that's really important. We need to collect and move the material and dispose of it. We do make a lot of electricity, so about $70 million a year worth of electricity is sold to Hawaiian Electric Company. It's about 9 to 10% of the demand on the island. So it is a waste, our H-Power is a waste energy facility, so we do accomplish that. But the department, and there's tipping fees and many other things, but the department, it does cost the department more to run all of the refuse operation and disposal and H-Power than the income that's received.
I did find the comment, by the way, out of all these papers. It was a viewer, his name is JP, and he just wrote in that he agrees with you, Professor Singh, that we should not even consider the very outdated landfill ideas, and he was wanting to hear about your alternate ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. You see, Professor Babcock said that there are no other models to go by, but that's blatantly wrong. We've had since 2020, 20-ton per day plant commissioned at Fort Hunter Liggett, USA. Okay, in Pune, India, they've been running a 72-ton per day plant since 2008. Roger, have you visited any one of these plants?
No.
Why not? I mean, the city has been looking since 2011 for some solution to this landfill problem, and it's been 14 years and they haven't come up with a solution. What have they been doing for 14 years? Even 4 years is a long time since the Blangiardi administration came in. I mean, with all due respect to that administration, but we've got to work faster with greater urgency and responsibility to this matter. Ottawa managed a 135-ton per day plant for about 15 years before it ran into some financial issues. I mean, not that the plant was not profitable. Plant was profitable, but there were other issues going on. In Yoshi, Japan, 1994, 24-ton per day plant. Now, we know that Oahu produces 1,000 tons per day. So how can we?
2,000.
2,000,
okay.
Even more.
Well, I have different forecasts here from the city. They said by 2040, we will have about 800 tons per day. I don't know whom to believe, the words of the city and county of Honolulu, or printed stuff, or what you are saying now. Well, maybe. But even then, the way to solve it, you should think outside the box. First of all, you can scale a plant up to 500 tons per day, 1,000 tons per day. It just involves chemical engineering. And next, you can even think of having a distributed system in every community, having 50 tons per day here, 50 tons per day here. After all, each community should handle their own trash, you know.
Let's get to some of the other viewer questions, if that's okay, because
Yes.
they are piling up. Mimi in Kalihi is asking, the current landfill site has many more years of life left. Roger, you could probably weigh in on this one. Why close it now? It seems logical to buy as much time as possible until this dilemma is solved, and maybe potentially gives more time to figure out other creative solutions.
Yeah, so the operating permit for the landfill was last updated in 2019. It gave an extension to the landfill. It required that the a new landfill site be identified by December 31st of 2022. The city was not able to meet that deadline and asked for a 2-year extension to December 31st of 2024. And we did announce this site right before that. The permit also specifies that the landfill will close by 2028 and will no longer receive waste, and that a new landfill would be in place, to receive the waste. So, yeah, that's how we got to where we are.
I know I'm going back a little bit.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And I'm sorry, I didn't fully answer the question. So, but there is capacity. So every year we do an assessment, a flyover, essentially with drones to figure out how much capacity is left. And the current estimate is that there's capacity in the existed permitted site till 2032 at current waste generation rates.
I know I'm going back a little bit. We talked about so many different things and kind of glazed over a few of them. The original question from Mike and Makiki was asking, he wanted to know from our panelists here where you think the proposed location would be or should be. Wayne, I didn't give Sierra Club a chance to weigh in on this. Do you guys have a suggested spot if it's not the current one in Wahiawā?
Well, I think we touched upon some potential options looking to, the Navy and the Fairlands that were being considered, and then I guess the Navy changed its mind for some reason, which I'm actually curious if the city has any more insight as to what led to that. But really, I don't think there is a landfill advisory committee. I feel like maybe their work or that discussion may need to be reopened, just to to look at what other options there may be, both under existing legal frameworks and then maybe specific amendments to, I think, Act 73, which is what the recommendations were. It's interesting that I think the overall recommendation was not to site the landfill over an aquifer.
That's right.
But that particular recommendation was not followed. Really, one thing I'd like to throw out there is, to the extent we are going to discuss a landfill, to the extent that is in play, maybe we should be looking to the people who have been directly impacted by the current situation, right? So the folks who, have experienced, the injustice and the health impacts, the generational health impacts, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because they will really have insights as to how to maybe set something up that's a lot more equitable, and a lot less unjust, right? And to the extent we are, seeking their insight and guidance or even decision making, we need to make sure that their work is also supported, right? So we're not just exploiting their time and insight and labor, but really rethinking who we look to in all of these conversations, about challenging.
Wayne, you just asked in the middle of that, you asked Roger a question about some of the conversations with the military, and that was actually the part 2 that I wanted to go back to. Did the city have conversations with the military of using their land for a landfill, and where did that conversation end?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So the landfill, the previous efforts looked, basically do essentially a geographic information system sort of analysis of land areas and exclude areas that are excluded by either being within 10,000 feet of an airport, being in a tsunami inundation zone, or being with Act 73, as Wayne mentioned, within a half mile of a school, a residential property, or a hospital, or on any conservation lands. And it also can't be on an active earthquake fault according to federal rules as well. So, but with respect to military lands, they usually have been excluded in the past from the analysis because it was assumed that it would be very difficult to get permission for those lands. So our Landfill Advisory Committee did not look at those. And then the Red Hill crisis happened, so they said, you shouldn't be over the aquifer, so you should go outside the no-pass zone. And they said you should go back to the military and you should look at perhaps eminent domain to purchase properties perhaps that would otherwise meet, but they're residential, so buy them, for example. So we used that information and we did go back to the LAC, Landfill Advisory, Land Use Commission, LUC, and asked them for the 2-year extension to do just that. So what we did in the 2 years time period was to look, to go to the military, ask about all the military lands, to look at all the area potential sites outside the no-pass zone, and to look at options for purchasing residential properties and turning them to not residential anymore and siting there. So we did do all those analyses, and what we found was that the military said no to the sites that were available. We didn't find any options for eminent domain. It would have required purchasing too many homes at astronomical cost, and then with the Act 73 restrictions, there was no other place. So that's why we made a three-step Plan A, Plan B, Plan C. Plan A was where we identified and gave our assurances that we would use the best technology available to make it as safe as possible. And then a Plan B would be to go back to the legislature to modify Act 73 in order to make sites available outside of the no-pass zone, outside the aquifers, requires both the buffer distance to be reduced and the conservation area restriction to be eliminated. If both of those things happen, there are several sites that we identified that are possible sites that could host a landfill. So that's Plan B. Plan C, if both of those result in nothing or are outlawed in some way, then we would move to Plan C as the only other alternative, which is to stay at Waimānalo Gulch and somehow expand it or something like that.
Amy, I see you leaning in, very intrigued in some of the things that Roger's saying. I feel like you have a question you want to ask him.
You're very intuitive. So I guess my question, kind of following up on that description, is a question I've been asked by community members and I haven't had the answer. And it's really about the negotiation with the military and wondering if our governor or members of our federal delegation were also involved in those conversations, or was it a conversation between the city and these high-level military leaders? Because I feel like that might be part of the problem.
Yeah, so it was negotiations between the city and the high-level military.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, and to be clear, are conversations with the military of the land, using it for a landfill, is that done, or could there still be a pathway that way?
As far as the city's concerned, that pathway is closed. But if it was reopened in some way, then we would be, we'd be interested in participating.
Eric in Kailua is asking, and I think, Rep, this one's for you, with the state making it difficult to find a new landfill site, what would state lawmakers suggest the city do, and even the other counties, since they too will be in the same situation at some point?
I think that right now lawmakers are really struggling with this situation because, as we know, that's not a welcome kind of facility in any community. And I think that lawmakers actually are having more complex, interesting conversations around waste management. So having a lot more conversations about extended producer responsibility, so as to reduce the sources of these waste materials and to really move in the direction that many jurisdictions have moved to make sure that the goods that we are consuming are producing less waste and holding those producers that make millions of dollars off of these products economically responsible, so as to build the kinds of facilities that we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. So doing more investment in the area of reducing, recycling, and reusing. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to try to get through some more of these because we have a lot of viewers that are definitely interested in this topic. Patty is asking, what is the feasibility of building smaller landfills around the island to allow more communities to help shoulder the burden of living close to one another?
Yeah, so the problem is with the restrictions that exist now, there are no places where you can put it in communities.
And then Casey on Facebook is asking how much of what goes into Oahu's landfill is from residents versus from the military versus from the millions of tourists, tourism buildings and hotels. Do we know the breakdown?
I don't think we have the breakdowns by the source, but the city does. We only collect from residential, commercial, military, all other collection is done by private waste hauling companies, but it all ultimately comes to the city. So we are responsible then for its processing and disposal. So it does include, of course, commercial, military, everybody. We get all the waste.
And the next three that I want to read are actually comments from our viewers. So not questions, but I want to read them. I'm going to read them back to back and then maybe give you guys a chance to weigh in on what just the community is saying. This viewer wrote in, why in the world is the city still looking at the Wahiawā site when they know it's over an aquifer after all of the problems at Red Hill? Unbelievable. This other comment from Anthony said, no district should be held responsible for Oahu's landfills. Every district must share in the solution to its locations. Not in my backyard, then whose? Seemingly different solutions can be reconciled. And then Valerie also emailed in, protect our aquifers, don't allow landfills near them. I agree with Professor Singh, we need to think outside of the box. I know there was no question, but curious to get the panel's sentiment on what viewers are saying.
You know, the Land Use Commission also doesn't have the full information, and nobody has fed them the accurate information. So in 2019, the LUC granted a special use permit to allow the operation of the Waimānalo Gulch landfill until March 2028. Okay? But again, nobody has told them that you can do without a landfill, that there is this alternate technology. You see, when you have a problem, when everybody's health is being affected, when all over the island your landfills are producing more nitrous oxides, particulate matter, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, mercury, and dioxins and furans that cause cancer than a plasma R gasification plant will emit, then why shouldn't we think of going for plasma R gasification? In fact, burning waste through the H power, in fact, at that time, if the city had opted for plasma R gasification, it would have made more money and it would have emitted fewer pollutants. The incineration really emits a lot of pollutants that are damaging everybody's health. Now when you look at recovery and recycling, I mean, this is something that could have been started yesterday. The hazardous waste that shipped out is such a small quantity, medical waste, etc., that you could, I mean, nobody even worries about shipping it out, but shipping out 1,000 tons per day of trash is a massive project. And who will want to ship it out? Who will want to be the contractor to take it away? They tried, the city tried to find a contractor, and what was the result? They couldn't get any takers.
But from what I'm hearing from Roger from the city, right now the city still needs to find a landfill.
Yeah, that's correct.
We can't just go straight to what Professor Singh is suggesting.
Well, not by 2028. It's the construction and permitting and construction and stuff like that will take a long time for a new waste reduction facility. In the interim, if that was the way we went, that we would have a lot of waste that we would still need to process, and either. So if a new facility is going to be a totally different location, then that's fine. You can keep this running. If it's going to be at the same location, then we have to shut it down, and then we're depositing all solid waste. So H-Power reduces the volume by 90%. So instead of municipal solid waste going there, it's 10 times as much. So it is 2,000 tons per day, 880,000 tons per year is how much waste the island produces.
Speaking of all of that waste, we put out and sorry to cut you off, if you want to keep going, but this comment from our viewer kind of piggybacks on what you're saying. We put out a Facebook question and we asked our viewers, how do we solve Oahu's landfill dilemma? And Patricia said, cut back on consumption and waste. Is her answer a viable path forward or improvement to our problem? And how do we get our community to do that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think most, I don't remember the numbers, but it's a huge percentage of everything that we use and consume is shipped in. And so it has to have packaging. And if it was just water in big tanks, then I guess we could just pump it out of a ship and into something else. But we have food and products and all kinds of electronics, and everything that we buy and consume comes in packaging. And so ships are coming every day bringing container loads of things, and all of that ends up becoming municipal solid waste pretty much, except for the part that we take out and use. So that's a big challenge, you know, to figure out here. We don't produce, we don't really make anything that we ship out except for some food. So you know, that is our challenge, to figure out how we do that. And there are ways. You can use recyclable containers and then have something that you can do with that. We recycle aluminum and glass and paper and plastic, and now electronic waste is also all collected and is shipped to recycling centers. So there are things that can be done, and obviously we need to do more in that area, and that is what the city is doing and pursuing. So we have high recycling rate.
Wayne, how do you, from the Sierra Club of Hawaii's perspective, encourage the community to reduce their waste consumption? And do you feel like the community can make a dent in our landfill problem if we're better at that?
In a lot of ways, like we have to, right? I mean, this isn't just a waste stream issue. This is a resilience issue, right? Knowing what's happening with our planet, knowing that supply chains are breaking down, that food-producing regions that we depend on are drying up. We need to become way more self-sufficient, way less reliant on imported food, imported goods, and again, when you think about what our children, what our grandchildren, in their lifetimes are going to witness and what they're going to need to survive, we need to make these changes, or we just condemn them, right, to an unimaginable reality, and so. That's part of the message we're putting out there, is we need to focus on preparing ourselves for what's to come. And to that, and to the extent, sorry to go on a little longer, but and that kind of informs my concerns as well with regards to, the operation of this landfill over our aquifer, right? So, as Ernie Lau says, landfills are forever, right? And so even with, the best systems in place, as we saw at Red Hill, we can't rule out human error. We also have to be mindful that we may not have the resources necessary to maintain this landfill, to pump out the leachate. We have to think about the possibility of fires or other extreme weather-related events that could compromise the integrity of this facility. Maybe not in the next 10, 20 years, but in 80 years or 100 years, again, within our grandchildren's lifetimes.
Professor Singh, I know you want to weigh in.
Look, just because some people, engineers, politicians are lazy to find a solution doesn't mean that we should reduce our quality of life. We don't have to reduce the waste we consume, we just have to handle it and manage it better. That's all. With plasma or gasification, you have the best of both worlds. Now I tell you, Roger Babcock said, oh, it'll take years, etc. Right. Pam Bondi wanted criminals and illegal immigrants to be self-deported, and she was told by her members of staff that it'll take 6 months to develop an app to do that. But Elon Musk's team said, oh, we'll do it in 24 hours. Trump wanted to get rid of ISIS. People told him it'll take 6 months. Another general said, I'll do it in a week. And they did it in a week. Where there's a will, there's a way. You've got to be imaginative. You've got to be innovative. You've got to push the envelope. You've got to work hard. There's no substitute for really thinking out of the box. And you've got to move it. The new technology is here. This is the 21st century, but the landfill is 19th century technology. I cannot imagine why everybody says, oh, we should now have another landfill. Everybody is fed up of a landfill. Tell me who isn't fed up of a landfill. So find a different technology, and plasma or gasification is sitting there. It's a low-hanging fruit ready to be plucked.
Professor, I hear you, and I know we have so many questions on the landfill because tonight's show is about the proposed location and the landfill.
Yeah.
And I know the city has made it clear that we still, regardless, in the interim, at least until they are ready or able to go into new technologies, need to find a landfill. We have a couple of questions actually though on the proposed location, on the Wahiawā location, excuse me. The first one is from Marian Mililani. She was asking, what is the proposed lining made of? Have they thought if the materials they're proposing and whether the materials could be harmful or toxic? Going back to the proposed Wahiawā location.
Yeah, so the landfill liners are required in the rules and regulations and federal laws, and a liner is actually what's called a liner system. It's the same thing that's at Waimānalo Gulch landfill, and at least the two previous landfills in Kailua and the previous landfill in Waianae. So that takes us back to the 1960s. It's a two-part liner. It's what's called a geomembrane, which is a word for plastic. It's a thick plastic high-density polyethylene liner, and the other part is a clay liner. So those two things are sandwiched together as kind of that's called a single liner system, and that is placed on the excavated area on the ground. There's sand, there's gravel. It's placed on top of there. Then there's more sand and gravel, and then waste is placed inside there. At the low spots is water is gathered, and it is then so it can be extracted using pumps. That material is called leachate, and that must be removed from the landfill on a continuous basis. The rules are such that you can't have any more than 12 inches of water in the bottom of the landfill at any time. So it's not a big storage tank of liquid or of water like a fuel storage tank. So the head on the bottom of the landfill is only 12 inches.
I think you might have answered this other viewer question, Mike from the Big Island. He was asking, assuming the landfill is built in Wahiawā, what does the city plan to do if there is a leachate into the aquifer?
Yeah, so the landfills also have to have monitoring wells, and so leachate is continuously removed, as it is from Waimānalo Gulch, and we have to take that and treat it. So it goes to a wastewater treatment plant, is the way it's done now. If there was a leak, it would be detected when it reached the water supply, and not the water supply, the a monitoring well that's required to be around the landfill, and then that would alert the city and the Board of Water Supply and the residents that this had happened, and then any downstream wells that would be affected potentially. If it was to continue, then that would be you would take action to either close those wells or treat the water or something like that.
And there's not much action you can take. By the time the leachate reaches those monitoring wells, it's headed straight for the aquifer. There's no landfill in the world that doesn't leak. So why are we still thinking that we live in this fairy tale world, that with our engineering we can make a perfect solution? People who live in the real world know that the landfill will leak.
Your comment does lead straight to, or relates to this viewer's comment and question. It's a frustrated viewer in Kapolei is what this person called themselves. The city is taking the heat tonight. Roger, I know you're in a tough position, and perhaps rightfully so given the current system, but there is an entire state government with more resources at its disposal. What is it planning to do to help? Maybe Representative Perusso, have you heard anything from the state side?
Thank you so much for that question. Legally, waste management falls under the purview of the city and county, so falls under the county's jurisdiction. And the state can be involved, and we are involved in terms of writing legislation governing those practices. But it really strikes me that there has been inadequate investment in this problem solving over the course of many years. And I don't lay this at the feet of Mr. Babcock. I think that he's, really taken the brunt of the effects of this, I would say, failure to deal with the situation that we knew was emerging and emergent. And I think the lack of investment comes from the county's failures to adequately tax wealth and to use that wealth to address our collective problems, our public problems, and that includes waste management. And I also want to say, while I'm talking, just to address, a point that you were making, I don't necessarily think that our quality of life is improved or necessarily more positive as a result of having this reliance on imports. And I do think that there is something to be said for a return to or restoration of a more circular economy. And I think that really what we're seeing in the current economic climate reminds us that when we are so heavily reliant on the global markets and global supply chains, that we are extremely vulnerable in so many ways. So this is larger than a waste management question. It's more an economic systems questions as well.
Roger, this question's for you. A viewer wrote in, he's a golfer, and he's asking, at the risk of incurring the wrath of my fellow golfers, I suggest the city look into purchasing the Hawaii Country Club, aka the Old Kunia Golf Course, for the landfill. Is that a location that has been looked at?
It's over the aquifer. So, it's
So the
not
same
big-
problems?
Same problem.
Okay. I'm going to see if I can get through a couple more with the last few minutes that we have. That Michael from Maui is also asking about looking at more creative ways to make filters to create clean air, and why can't we look at more newer technologies, kind of siding with Professor Singh here. Maybe you can weigh in on that. Is the city going to be doing that as well?
Yeah, so we're doing that. We're doing that now. We have currently a long-range planning study going on. I did want to mention that, the landfill that we are siting now is not just our municipal solid waste, which is mostly ash. There's some municipal solid waste that has to be diverted, but it also considers the construction and demolition waste, which is a whole other waste stream. We have 2,000 tons a day of municipal solid waste. There's at least another 1,000 tons a day of construction and demolition waste, which currently goes to a landfill called PVT, a privately run landfill in Nanakuli, which may have 5 years left of remaining life. When that closes, that waste will come to the city as well. So all waste comes to the city unless there's some other place for it to go. So that has been factored in to the sizing of the landfill that we are currently looking for.
And will the public still have an opportunity to weigh in with where we are now with this current situation as far as where the next landfill is going to be?
Absolutely. So once a site is approved and we're able to then move forward with perhaps land purchase, and we have to do environmental impact study, there'll be lots of public hearings and debate. We have to get permits, for example, from the Land Use Commission. That's a contested case hearing situation, can last multiple days. There's lots of opportunity for input there. There's public notices that have to be done. Lots of studies that have to happen before you can site and build a landfill.
I know we mentioned 2,000 tons of trash. Was that per day?
That's per day.
That's insane. We kind of touched on this a little bit a few questions ago, but are there steps, and this is a question for everybody, with just the last few minutes that we have here, what would you encourage our viewers of what they can actually do to try and reduce the amount of trash and our consumption? If we could just go around the table if anyone has tips or suggestions.
You really don't have to ask the people to reduce their quality of life. There are alternate technologies. Dr. Roger mentioned that they are looking at new technology. They have a long-range plan. In 2003, the city commissioned a plasma arc gasification study. How long is their long-range plan, I want to ask? Is it 22 years? We don't have that time. We have to decide within the next year or two what we are going to do. And I really think we can help the community, we can help the people, as well as use good technology, modern technology, to emerge into the next part of the century.
I do, Dr. Singh, I do want to say I appreciate your insights, and I know we've gotten a couple of viewer comments that also agree and are thankful that you're bringing up some other creative methods. But with that last question, Representative Perusso, I want to go to you. Anything you'd like to say to our viewers?
Yes, I think the first thing we think of in sustaining our lives is food. And I don't think that my quality of life is improved by eating imported avocados from Mexico when we have the capacity to grow our own food here, and it's much more nutritionally dense. And it's actually a way of contributing to and participating in a more circular economy. So I would say people should start with their food sources.
And Wayne, what would the Sierra Club of Hawaii like to tell people about our consumption trash problem?
Get engaged. Figure out what's going on with the legislature, with the city council. I think as Representative Perusso mentioned, like this is a bigger than a waste stream issue, right? This is like a security issue, and so we need to look at. You can advocate for investments in waste reduction strategies and reuse strategies, recycling policies that can fix our land and water use challenges. We have so many fake farms that are blowing up the cost of ag land, so that real farmers can't even produce food, right? And remember that not too long ago, we were able to sustain a population close to what we have today with no imports, right? And there are studies that show that that if we do pivot back towards traditional food systems and traditional crops and land uses, we can actually again feed about 1 million or so folks without imports. Right? It's going to take big changes, but these are the kinds of changes that we're going to have to make.
It's going to take a long time to get there, but the small steps will make a difference. I wish we had more time. I know this is a topic that so many people clearly care about, but just want to say thank you to all the four of you for being here tonight. Thank you to our guests for tuning in and writing in. And to our guests in studio, we have Director of Honolulu's Department of Environmental Services, Roger Babcock, and Sierra Club of Hawaii Director, Wayne Tanaka, and State Representative Amy Perusso, and UH Manoa Professor, Dr. Amarjit Singh. No insights next week as a reminder, but we'll be here with an important discussion on illegal fireworks. The situation has been rampant for years, but this past New Year's Eve was devastating. After 7 people died, 6 of them in one incident following an illegal fireworks explosion. So is it a crime or culture? Join us next week for Kako, Hawaii's Town Hall. I'm Lauren Day for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Have a great night.
Local broadcasts of Insights on PBS Hawaiʻi are made possible by the support of viewers like you. Mahalo, and by Carl Smith Ball, providing legal services throughout Hawaii and